Joining us now, she's entering her 8th season as the Troy head coach, fresh off the NCAA Tournament appearance for this program. First time since 1996 they made the tournament. I speak of Beth Mullins, who's back with us here on In the Circle. Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Just got back from practice a little bit ago, and it's looking good right now.
Well, let's reflect back here, because obviously we had you on right when you made the NCAA Tournament and what that meant at that time. You got to play in the Tuscaloosa Regional, but now that you've had some time to think about it over the off season, what did it mean to get into this program to the tournament, which hadn't been to the tournament since 1996, to lead this team to this program back to the NCAA Tournament? What did it mean now, looking back on it?
I mean, it means just as much right now as it did that day that we just lost. And I'm sure a lot of people have seen the video. They just lost their minds when they saw their name pop up. It's just special. It's hard to describe. It had been the goal of this program for probably the 2 years before that to make the regionals. We hadn't really had it as a goal because we had a lot of building to do the years before that. But to just listen to them talk about goals and set their goals high and do things that have never really been done before. And for that to actually happen, that is a coach's dream. And to watch their faces and watch them just, again, lose their minds when Troy's name come up, it will be a moment I will not forget. And I hope it's a moment, and I doubt it's a moment they will ever forget.
Take me through that day for you on Sunday. Were you confident you were in? Were you nervous? What was going through your mind? And then the selection show's going on, and then you see your name pop up there in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, I'd love to say I was confident, but I don't know if anybody that's, living in the 30s, 40s in RPI is ever really confident on Selection Sunday, because a lot of things go into it. But, I think if we had had a better conference tournament than we ended up having, I would have been a lot more confident. But I had a feeling we were definitely going to get 3 in. I think everybody in the Sun Belt felt really good about that. I think the 4 we thought we deserved 4, but you just never know on Selection Sunday. So we kind of had a feeling it was going to be us and South probably in the 3 and the 4. And so no, I'd love to say I was completely confident that our name was going to pop up, but I've been there before. My first time going as an at-large was actually UAB's first time ever going, and
That's
it was
right.
that thing. We went to Tuscaloosa. We fortunately were like the first one announced, so it was easy. We got over that anticipation. But I've been there before, and I don't want to go through the anxiety that you have on that day, but there is something about being an at-large on the bubble that you really don't know if you're going to pop up or not. So that moment really is extremely exciting.
There's a rush, isn't there? There's a rush to it, both good and bad. I mean, from it, because obviously when you're in, you already know you're in, so you're just trying to see where you're in. But when you're not sure, even if you feel you have that great resume, like I thought you were in for sure. I thought the Sun Belt was going to be a 4-bid league the whole time. The only question was, I felt, were you going to be in Tuscaloosa, or was South Alabama going to be in Troy? Then the other one turned to be in Gainesville, and that's kind of what turned out. You got to go to Tuscaloosa, they got to go to Gainesville. But you're right, there is that rush, because until you see your name, you just don't know what to expect. But once you see that name, it's got to be one of the most emotional moments, thrilling moments there you can imagine.
It really is. And it's funny because we always pick our girls' brains early in the fall about what a possible goal for the team would be. And obviously they want to get back to regionals and do a better job than we did this year, but they want to know that we're in. And I think that's interesting because you really only experience that high one time. And after that, you just want to be in and know you're in and take care of business. So as exciting as that moment was, I will be happy to, make it a little more sure this next year.
Well, the other thing too that stood out that was a tough regional. I remember the country was stunned because that was the region where Clemson got put in. Yep. They thought they could host. You have Alabama, and then you have Alabama State. Describe that regional and the experience having played in it, and what you take from it moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of interesting because it was COVID year. And so I think some of the things you get to do during a regional non-normal years, we weren't really able to do. We weren't able to, experience Tuscaloosa and go to restaurants and stuff that we would normally do. And we were testing in the morning, and there were some just strange things that came along with it. But yeah, that night, it's funny, our girls were going so crazy. They didn't pay attention to who we were playing because we popped up first, and everybody's losing their minds that we were trying to look around them to like, well, who's the 2 seed? And I was surprised it was Clemson. We actually played Clemson the year before. We were one of the few teams that played them in COVID, and we knew what Cagle was capable of. And I pretty much said it was the regional of 70 miles an hour. Like, we just got in cages and we put the machine on 75 and between 70 and 75 and went to work. I mean, we knew what we were going to get into, and it's a tough regional. It was an exciting one. I mean, we watched all the games that happened, and I think that whole regional was a really good show for the fans.
What did you think your team learned from that experience that they're going to use this year? I mean, you went 1-2, you got to win, lost to Clemson twice, tight one in that last game. You mentioned, I mean, the pitching in that region, I mean, Montana Fouts, Cagle, Leanna Johnson, I mean, it goes on and on. But what do you think the experience learned from that experience that you think it'll benefit you this upcoming year?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to think we would. I hate to say act like you've been there. I mean, if you've never been there, it's just really hard to act like you've been there. I mean, the emotions and the higher you get, the lower you get. And we came in that first game and you could tell we were tight. I mean, Leanna threw the ball, over the plate more than she normally does. And we did not have really good plans, and we just didn't play the best of our ability. And if I could go back and change anything, it would be just to, have been there before. So I do think just experience, we returned almost our whole team. So obviously our goal is to get back there. And I think having played multiple games in a regional just naturally makes you more experienced at it. So, I mean, we knew what we were getting into, and, they weren't afraid, but I think that atmosphere, and you're in Tuscaloosa. I mean, where else would you rather go than the place that holds the attendance record? And just 3 people sounds like 100. I mean, it's awesome.
Now you come to the fall. I'm curious because, prior to this, you're thinking the goal is to make that tournament, break that, long drought, make the tournament. Well, now you've made the tournament. So how do you approach your team? You mentioned you got a veteran team that tasted that, but they also probably got patted in the back throughout the offseason a lot. Hey, congratulations. You're awesome. Do this. So what's the balance as a coach now with, hey, we want more than this now. Don't just settle for that. Let's push that and try to avoid some of the players being maybe complacent.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that a lot. I mean, I think our motto from probably year 2 since I've been here has been, raise the standard and then be the standard. And so every team, so this is team 29 and team 28 was the team that made it. Every team is trying to be the standard, whatever that means, whether, we're talking about in the classroom, a lot of different things. And so not that each team is competing against the other, but we're trying to raise the standard just a little bit more. And I think they understand that. And so the goals are bigger and things that we've never done before. I mean, winning the conference is a goal this year. I mean, I know a lot of people outside of the Sun Belt think the Sun Belt has a little bit of a glass ceiling, but I think this group really does think we are capable of winning it. And, maybe making it look a little different than it has over the last 20 years. I mean, I think that's the next goal for, I think, anybody in the Sun Belt that has made a regional is to really try to win the Sun Belt outright.
Well, it helps when you have great pitching, and you've got that. With Leanna, obviously, we talk about she went 21-8 last season, 1.66 ERA. What impressed you about her with her youth? I mean, people forget how young she is, and now she enters this season coming up here with people now kind of know who she is.
Yeah, I think if you spent a day in the bullpen with her, I mean, she has it, but she is constantly trying to get better. I mean, there's something she holds herself to a ridiculously high standard. And I mean, you can't ask for anything more than that as a coach, but she's always working to, be a little bit better than she was last year. And you got to reinvent yourself a little bit, especially when everybody knows who you are and knows what you throw. And, she's gotten on a speed program this year, and she's really, bought into that. So she's throwing a little bit harder than she was. She's working on changeups, off speeds, and she's just bought into them. She never thinks that she's good enough and that she can just rely on her natural talent. She's always trying to get better. And, that's just a dream. And she loves being at Troy. I mean, I think any team like us that has kids that are at that caliber that want to be here and want to win for our university, that's just, it's just amazing.
Bleeds the color, right? Like, wears the colors in her sleeve, literally.
Literally.
Is she, how about her as a leader with the pitching staff? Is she one of those that's a vocal leader with the staff? Does she lead by example?
She does both. I mean, she's one of the hardest workers on the team. I mean, she's there every day. I mean, if she doesn't have a bullpen, she's going to be there doing her her movements and her weighted ball stuff, but she's also vocal also, like, so she does a little bit of both. I think she's stepping up more in the vocal leadership role this year than she ever has. I mean, we lost two very vocal leaders. We lost two kids and they both were very vocal leaders. So I think we're having, a couple kids are stepping up and maybe talking more than they ever have. And she's one of those. But again, we always say if you have a circle drawn around you, you should be one of the hardest workers on the team. And she definitely embodies that. So she leads by example and vocally, which again is a dream. I mean, that's all you can ask for.
Talk about the rest of the staff behind her there. Who are some of the arms there you're looking for to maybe also kind of helping on the load there factor? Do you see it as some players stepping up to be a number two? Do you think it's by committee be after her?
No, absolutely. I mean, we lost one pitcher in Kinsley Blassingame who did some really great things for us. I mean, she took on quite a few innings this last year as a senior. And so we lost her, but we brought in two freshmen. So we actually have six pitchers on the roster. So yeah, I mean, Leanna's been our workhorse for a couple of years, but Libby Baker, who I think if you watched our second Clemson game, you really saw what Libby Baker was really capable of. She really came on and has picked up right where she left off. And then Brianna Bailey, who didn't get as many innings as she's capable of getting, I think is really putting on a show this fall. And then again, we have a couple freshmen, and it's just we've got plenty of arms. I mean, it's exciting. Like, we've tried to build this program based off of pitching and defense. I think if you try to build it off offense, that's just a tough road to lead. So I think we've done a good job of that. And we've got some young arms. I mean, they've been here for a while.
Yeah. And Libby, you mentioned the experience, the postseason experience she got in that Clemson game in particular. Did you sense that was kind of a turning point there that's going to help her this year, maybe give her more confidence having gone through that?
And the same with hitting. Like she's not a PO. She hits as well. And she was in the 4-hole, I think, in regionals as well. So she just kind of came on later in the year and started doing some things. I mean, she had some really bad games, but she had some really good games. So the goal is this year to just be consistent with that. I mean, she's got some nasty pitches. And she's very opposite of Leanna. Leanna's more up and Libby's more down. And when you can bring in, and then, Bree, I keep mentioning her. She didn't get a lot of time, but she throws so many different speeds. It's really fun to watch them work, and just our whole staff. And I'm blessed with a really great pitching coach that has done nothing but expect more of them this fall and not let them lean back on, last year.
Offensively, hit 284 as a team, hit 44 home runs. Who are your leaders offensively? You had tremendous talented players last year. Katie Webb led you at 376, 6 homers, 36 RBIs. Kelly Horn, 372, 8 homers, 48 RBI, on and on. Who are some of the offensive leaders, not only from a production standpoint, but from a leadership standpoint?
Honestly, a lot of the same people you mentioned. I mean, Katie was the only person in the regular lineup that we graduated this year. Now, that's a big loss because she was our 2 or 3 hitter for 5 years pretty much. But yeah, I mean, the same people, like Jade Sinnis was the only person in the lineup that did not move in the lineup last year. I mean, she led off every single game, I believe. And I mean, when you can do that and stay consistent at the top of the lineup, that just shows leadership in itself. I mean, so she's one of those people. Kelly Horn, I mean, she's going to be one of our vocal leaders. Logan Calhoun is a 6-year senior. She basically hit in the 9-hole all last year, but I think if you really know lineups, that 9-hole rolls over the top really well for you. So she's back. I mean, Katie Lively, all of our top hitters, except for minus Katie, are back. And we've had some kids like Candela Figueroa, who is a catcher from Argentina, is having a great fall. Libby's having a great fall. There's just a lot of we look good offensively, which again, we should. We're experienced. It's not a ton of turnover. So we're kind of able to do things in the fall that maybe we weren't able to do last fall, which that's all we talk about is just growing and being more elite than we were last year. I mean, we can be a little more elite at the plate, and that's how we're going to get our goals is we've got to be able to hit more elite pitching than we did last year.
Yeah, you mentioned Jade. She had 339, 8 homers, 33 RBIs. That's the thing. You had balance from a power standpoint. You got 3 or 4 players that can hit 6, 7, 8 homers, and you also had some players. You mentioned Figueroa. She had 10 steals as a team. Calhoun had 10 steals. So a little bit of versatility there in your offense.
Yeah, it was crazy is that's the slowest team we've ever had last year. So it's a good thing we hit some home runs and we almost led the nation in doubles, thank God, because we better have gotten on second because if we were on first, there were very few kids that were getting to second. But that has changed this year. We have brought in a lot of speed and we have an incredible strength coach that has gotten a lot of our kids that maybe didn't think they were fast to a point where they know they can steal some bases. So it's a very different looking team on the bases than we had in the past, which is going to be a huge advantage to, you know, speed never die, speed never slumps. So it's going to help us win a couple more ball games than maybe we did last year.
With such a veteran team coming back, obviously you got some new faces. Of the new faces, who are some that you think can contribute? And also, how do you mix in the newcomers with this veteran team and make sure that chemistry is good?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's funny, we didn't start team practice till, into September, middle of September. And so you don't really have an idea of what your team is because you're in small groups and they're not really around each other on the field. But as soon as we got into team practice and had, team defense, I knew that these freshmen, they pick things up really quick. Ayana Hughes is a kid from Georgia. She can pretty much play anywhere in the infield. And honestly, if we needed her to in the outfield, Taylor McKinney, she's a kid that plays on came from a big organization in the Thunderbolts and just kind of gets it, can play at this level, probably competed at a similar level in travel ball a lot because she played on an elite team. We've got multiple. We've got Crystal Mays, who's just a hitter. She hasn't been able to, do too much right now because of some just small injuries, but, they just pick things up really quick. And I'm excited. I think they're going to be competing for some positions and, the our culture has kind of allowed kids to do that. I think over the last 4 or 5 years, the upperclassmen really do take in the underclassmen and make them feel welcome. And I think when you can feel welcome and you can be yourself just inside our culture, that you grow a lot faster than if you're, feeling like you can't fit in.
Defensively, you mentioned you only made 47 errors in 54 games last year, which was pretty remarkable. Because I've talked to a lot of coaches, and they told me the challenge last year, in a lot of cases, because of limited contact and the protocols and the lack of reps in the fall and not having games in falls in many cases, that the defense was behind and during the season. They had, that was a challenge. Yet your team was strong defensively. How were you able to be so good defensively successful there from a defensive standpoint?
Well, it's funny you said we had 47 errors. If you asked our defensive coach, Taylor Smart, she would want to throw something at 47. She thinks she was not happy with that was actually not our best defense last year. And that was a really good defense we had. So I think we were one of the top 5 in the country COVID year and the year before.
Yeah.
I'm blessed. I have a coach that just prides herself in defense. I mean, and you got to have a little bit of balance. I mean, I've got a great pitching coach. I've got a great infield defensive coach. And then, I work on offense and then, Coach Smart helps me with it. But again, I go back to, we're not old school, but we do pride ourselves in pitching and defense. I think that's what keeps you consistent through a year is you've got to have, that has got to be your base. And then, yes, you want to have a great offense. And I think that's what got us over the edge last year is we could hit really well last year, but our kids are proud of their defense. I mean, they want to be the best in the nation. They want to make those plays and we practice it a lot. So I got to give my assistant a lot of credit for that. She fights for every minute of defense she can get. And I'm not gonna lie, I coach the outfield. So sometimes when she wants to split for 45 minutes, I'm like, what is this about? But it pays off in the long run.
That's funny. We're speaking with head coach Beth Mullins here on In the Circle. Let's talk more about your staff because we didn't get a chance to do that last time we had you on. Just talk about your staff and the responsibilities that each has. And you've even kind of already alluded to it here with the defensive standpoint, from a pitching standpoint. Just break down your staff and your vision, how you were able to build this staff.
Yeah, I mean, I've been lucky. Taylor Smart, who's does a lot of defensive and helps with hitting, and she's like our recruiting coordinator, really great at recruiting. She's been with me my entire career here. She came on as a volunteer and then has spent 7 years as a paid assistant. So I've had the same assistant and the same director of ops for 8 years, which I think if you look at any staffs over time, the ones that are together for a long time usually have successful programs because that the communication and the gelling and coaching staffs being on the same page and selling the same thing to your program, I think is huge. And then Holly Ward, ironically, I recruited both of my assistants. That's aging me, but I recruited Taylor back when I was at UAB, and she told me no and went to Troy. That's okay. I hold it against her all the time. And then Coach Ward, I recruited to Mississippi State, where she ended up going to play. I did not coach her, but I've known them both before they even became coaches. And so I think that's the first thing you look for is just great humans. And I think I got that in both of them. So, Taylor's done a great job. She prides herself on defense. I think that is rare to find somebody that really takes that role on and just owns it. And I think the results are showing. And then same thing with Holly. She was a great pitcher at Mississippi State. I think a lot of people know her. She's one of the best drop ballers that, have come through anywhere. And she just understands pitching. I mean, she came from a great pitching coach in Van Studeman, who I also worked for. So we all have kind of we came from the same place. We talk the same language. The pitchers just completely buy in. And again, they really do anchor our pitching and defense. And then I love scoring. So I love doing offense, and I have to allow them to make sure we do really good pitching and defense, but I do all the rest. So it works out, and I hope that we can continue it for years and years and years. So far, we've stuck together through the thick and the thin with COVID. So I think if you can keep your staff together and be successful during these last 2 years, you're doing something.
Yeah, you mentioned Taylor, obviously being an alum at Troy. I would imagine that also helps, because if you're a student athlete there, they can go to her. She's probably gone through everything they've gone through, right? Like there's something about having an alum. I know that wasn't the reason you got it, but certainly now, you joked, you recruited her and she didn't go to you, but now it kind of pays off in the back end here.
Yeah, I joke. That's why I hired her, so she'd have to work for me because she told me no in the recruiting trail. But no, I mean, honestly, I'm not kidding. As soon as I got the job, I called her because I knew she was graduating. I had heard she was going to get into coaching and possibly go be a grad assistant somewhere. And I asked her to just wait to make that decision. And I met with her. And I think institutional knowledge is huge. I mean, she stayed on after graduating, and then my director of ops, Christy Lawrence, did the same thing. She was the director of ops in the previous staff. And I think institutional knowledge, people that love Troy, again, if you've never been to Troy, you don't really understand it, but people love having gone to Troy. And it is it is something else. I mean, there are very few people that went to Troy that don't love having gone to Troy. And I think when you can find those people that just are, diehard, it's something special.
You mentioned you run the offense. What is it about the offense that you have the passion for? You still run it? Because I know there's a lot of coaches that could easily say, you know what, I want to just worry about other things, but you do worry about the other things. But I could sense in your voice, your offensive philosophy. You've been successful everywhere you've been from an offensive standpoint. Where did that philosophy come from?
Honestly, I love this. There's a lot of people that are like swing coaches, and then there's hitting coaches. I love teaching hitting. I don't really love teaching the swing. We do teach the swing, and I will say Taylor is a huge part of that. She lives in those cages. If we were split, I'm on the field with at bats and, working on counts and, how to have an at bat a lot of times when we're split in offense, and she's in there really working on the swing, which is, she's extremely pay attention to detail. So I love the hitting aspect of it. I love, knowing what the pitcher is going to throw, knowing what you want to hit. I just think that is awesome. I think if you can teach your kids to think that way, they open a part of offense for themselves that they didn't know they had. And, I love teaching timing. I love teaching rhythms. I love teaching stuff like that. But I'm not going to lie, teaching the swing is not my favorite thing to do. But most of them, when they get here, they have really solid swings, and you're just trying to help them, be the best version of themselves. But again, I give Taylor a lot of credit. She does an extremely good job, and we work very well tandem together in the offensive part of things.
People may not be aware, you played at UAB, you coached at UAB, you coached under, obviously, Marla Townsend, a legendary head coach. And I bring her up because, we've talked about your defensive teams. They've been nationally ranked. I mean, top 10 most every year defensively. And when I've watched you play last season, it reminded me a lot of the UAB teams, because the UAB teams never beat themselves, right? Yep. You're clean, sound defensive. I have to imagine that influence under Coach Townsend kind of influenced you in that philosophy bringing that defensive approach here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's funny. I mean, I don't coach the infield. I mean, I haven't in years, but I played infield at UAB. I mean, I was a middle infielder. So my true like passion, was probably defense back in the day. But yeah, especially when I coached at UAB, again, we built that program, all of us, Lucy, Marla, and I, around pitching and defense. I mean, it was a very similar thing. Like, if you think back to when UAB made their first regional and they made supers, they had crazy good pitching and crazy good defense. And I think that's how you do that. So I think when you find us, something that works, you try to, do something similar. And I think we've tried to do something similar to that at Troy. And I think we have that defense and pitching mindset still to this day. I think in these sports, you can't get away from that.
No matter. I mean, people highlight the offense, but it still comes down pitching and defense at the end of the day. And I think that was a big part of the Sun Belt success.
Yeah.
4 teams in the field, and man, the pitching is just unbelievable with Leanna in there, Jessica Mullins at Texas State, Lackey over at South Alabama. The Cajuns obviously have quality arms now, coming back, even though they do lose Summer. But still, the pitching in this league, and all your years in coach, I mean, how do you compare this? Because that's really the headliner. When people are going to talk about the Sun Belt this year, they're going to be the first names are going to be talking about all these great pitchers you have.
And they should, because it's young pitching. I mean,
Yeah.
you talking about, Leanna will now be one of the older, and she's a junior. So, Lackey's was a freshman. Mullins was a freshman. I mean, that was some young pitching. And I think why we are so confident in the Sun Belt is that's, very stable, it seems to me. I mean, and we faced them. All of those pitchers are the real deal. I mean, that's not a fake thing. They're all really good. And I have no doubt Lafayette, I think Lamb's still there, will be having many arms to replace, Summer. And so I think it's a very stable conference we have right now. And I think anytime you're trying to get your conference at the top and you're trying to get multiple regional bids, you look at the pitching. And I think, and I'm sure there's going to be another team that has some arms. I know we have some really great coaches in the conference that do some crazy good recruiting. And I think it's going to be special again. I think it's just going to be what team, when they're facing each other, just can get that 1 or 2 runs when those pitchers are going against each other.
It's just amazing because it reminds me a little bit. I'm trying to remember. I think you were on the UIB staff during this time in CUSA where you had Angel Shamblin in Houston, who just got inducted to the Hall of Fame, Tony Paisley, East Carolina, who's getting inducted into the Hall of Fame soon. Kelly Harrell was part of that run. Allison Kime at UCF. I mean, that's only a few. There's more. But that was when
chills thinking about it because of trying to face those kids.
Yeah, I covered it. That was like when I got into softball, covering that league. But that was the league, back then, that was a top 5 league because of that, because of those talented arms. And I feel a lot of similarities here in the Sun Belt because there's no reason. The expectations are probably through the roof for the Sun Belt to not be. There's no reason why you can't be another top 5 league again and push with these arms. And they're young and they're going to be, winning a lot of games in these matchups. It's really exciting for the league, and I think will help bring exposure to the league.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I hope people are paying attention. I mean, we've worked really hard. There's a lot of coaches in this league that have been in it or been at those schools for a long time, and we have been. I think RPI is becoming this huge topic. That's something that we've been talking about for 5 or 6 years in the league, just trying to get everybody to buy into the fact that maybe it doesn't help you right now, but it's going to help the top right now. And we've all got to schedule tougher and we've got to do a better job just for the league. And I think that's paid off. But yeah, going back to the Conference USA times, when we made it the first year at UAB, we finished 4th in the league and made it, which is kind of similar to, I think South was 4th in the league and made it. And so, that's just solid when you're having your 4th, 3rd, all of that are just making the tournament pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would not surprise me like 10 years from now, all these arms we're talking about end up in their respective schools' Hall of Fames or honored as acknowledgement. I think we're in a really golden era here for the Sun Belt because we've talked in the past, and I've talked to other coaches in the Sun Belt. This is something you've been working on to being back to being a multiple big league. There was that stretch, obviously, with Texas State when they had Randy Rupp, and you were a 2 big league, but it's been up and, kind of not consistent enough. But now with this monster 4-bid league year, Man, the sky is the ceiling here for a league. Plus, we haven't even talked about programs like Monroe with Coach Fichtner, what they're building there. Sharon Perkins now is in the league at Georgia Southern, and with her great career at Georgia Tech. To me, I'm not just saying because you're on the show, but to me, the Sun Belt's one of the leagues I'm really fascinated and looking forward to seeing this year.
I think people should be. I mean, you brought up Molly Fichtner. She's a heck of a coach. I mean, I'm a huge fan of hers. I mean, she's still the youngest, I think, in the league. We joke. She and I think, are the youngest. I think it's her and I are maybe, she's definitely younger than me, but we're two of the youngest in the league. And she's doing really special things over there in Monroe. And I think a lot of people, I hope, are paying attention because, again, I'm a big fan of hers. And again, when Sharon got in the league, I texted her and told her, welcome, and that, she was going to do nothing but make this league better. And I truly believe that. So, yeah, there's a couple of new coaches in our league that I think are going to do a really good job, and I'm pumped. I mean, it's a great conference to be in because the coaches really are supportive of each other. I mean, it's not, we want the Sun Belt to do well. I mean, it's the best for everybody when the Sun Belt does well.
And it really creates a dramatic conference tournament. Like every year, it seems like there's this team that kind of sneaks up. Monroe did it a couple of years ago. Georgia State. I mean, it's a tough league. I know it's an unpredictable tournament. Talk about the format of the conference tournament moving forward and kind of what because when I look at the Sun Belt, it's like, okay, you have the top favorites, but really you can throw it out the window because it seems like every year there's a team that's quote unquote a lower seed that makes a run, and then there's usually a top team that bows out earlier than people expect. But that's how the balance of the league.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the format because I think this is my 8th year, and the format has changed 3 or 4 times when I've been in it. So, I mean, I think we were in the first leagues that started doing this hybrid thing where you have one round of double. Well, last year we were all double because of COVID, and there was a series that we didn't play. So it's going to go back to, I believe, we're still working on it. It still hasn't been completely voted on. So, which again tells you that we really do care because we want the tournament to help as many teams get into the tournament, and we don't want it to hurt. So, I mean, I'm not kidding. On our meetings, we talk more about the conference tournament and how that's going to help or hurt, teams getting into the tournament, the NCAA tournament. So it means a lot to us. And yeah, it's wild. I mean, whether it's single, double, hybrid, it's a fun, and it was at our place this year, and it was wild this year. So
yeah, I was watching it. It was some late nights there.
Yeah.
It seems like I can almost bank on a late night there. There's a late night 11 dramatic comeback games. It's kind of wild and nerve wracking. It's really it's dramatic, and it was cool because it was on ESPN Plus. So I got to watch, and I think talk about that because a lot of your games now in the league, especially the conference tournament, are on ESPN Plus, which I think helped your league too. The committee can watch you now on ESPN. Maybe years ago, it's kind of by hearsay. Hey, here was the score. But now you can watch it with your eyeballs. You can see these talented athletes that reside in this league.
Well, I think you watched what happened with the Pack, coming out after the announcement and saying that they were disappointed because they're just not seeing as much as other places are. And I think, the Sun Belt's agreement with ESPN and just being able to be on a platform that people can watch is huge. And I don't disagree with the fact that I think it's important to be on television. I mean, it's hard to know what a team is unless you see them with your own eyes. I mean, stats are stats, but until you actually, do the eyeball test, do these committee members really know what they're looking at? So I think it's huge. I think a lot of people, whether it was us playing the SDC or what, we were on a lot. And, there was one weekend where we had like 4 or 5 Power 5 wins just in the Sun Belt. And,
yes,
I think that was a huge part. I think, South Alabama was beating Georgia and we were beating Ole Miss. And there was just a lot of stuff going on that was also being seen by a lot of people. So I think just that in general for us across the nation is huge.
The non-conference schedule. I know in talking to Coach Glasgow and company that the league, all you coaches are on the same page, is scheduling tough and getting those quality non-conference games. And, honestly benefiting the fact that you can get quality games by busing. Heck, I mean, your state, I mean, there's quality games all over there. Yeah. I mean, but just talk about that philosophy of non-conference. I'm curious, are you having an easier time scheduling because of the success you've had, or has it been more difficult because, oh, wait a minute, they could beat us here? What's that been like?
No, I think if everybody really pays attention to RPI and how you want to be a successful team, whether you're power, mid, whatever the heck you are, playing good teams is how you do it. So if you're a good team, people want to play you. I mean, that's just what it is. So it has not been difficult. We're surrounded, and it's been great. I mean, we have two SEC schools in our own state that are 3 hours or less. We've got Florida State that's 2.5, 3 hours. We've got Atlanta that's 3 hours away from us. So we are, Birmingham is 2 hours away. So you think about UAB barely missed the NCAA regional, so that's a team
Right.
2 hours away. That's a top 50 team that we can play outside of conference. That's not a Power 5 team. So it's not even the Power 5 teams. It's just any kind of high RPI. We've got a lot of them down here in the South that we can just do a little midweek with. And so our midweek schedule this year is going to be strong. I think we have Florida State coming for a doubleheader. We'll have UAB on the slate. We'll have Georgia Tech on the slate. We're trying to add a couple more teams, Auburn and people like that. So we'll see.
Well, you mentioned the state. Like, obviously, everybody knows, football is, the most popular sport in the state and three. But I got to believe softball is right up there. I traveled there during the softball season. I mean, you highlighted all the programs: the Alabama, Auburn, UAB, Troy, South Alabama, North Alabama is now in Division One. I mean, we're not even talking D2 programs like Huntsville, when their coach Studerman there has been tremendous programs there. But just what is it about the state of Alabama that has so many programs at a high level at the same time? Like, I don't even think football can pull that off. There's a rich depth in this state. Like, you could put off an amazing tournament if you just put all the Alabama teams in one tournament.
They did it one year. I think it was the year after I left UAB. They did it in Birmingham, and they had like 9 Division I Alabama teams playing, and that's all you really have to do. So I think you get people in the South, I'll say Alabama, but really excited about anything, and they're going to get good at it. And so I think I think when Alabama got really good in the SEC and Auburn, and just when they started getting great, everybody around the state got excited. So, but you mentioned all the teams. I mean, most everybody in our state is at the top of their conference. So we've got us in South, Auburn, Alabama, that's, North Alabama. Everybody competes really well in their own conference. So I think when teams in your state are good at the college level, people want to be really good in that state. And so I think all of us doing our jobs and being very good has helped that. But I'm not hating it. I mean, our entire roster is from the 3 states of Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. So I think also when you find homegrown talent, people come and watch. And when people come and watch, other kids want to play in front of crowds. So it all kind of goes hand in hand.
It's incredible. I mean, UAB was probably one of the first 4 out last season. You can have them. Alabama State's becoming a perennial tournament team there. I mean, it's just insane. You all should probably do a tournament to help your resumes alone. I mean, it's kind of wild. Like, I know I just had the Iowa coaches. They do like a Big 4 in the fall, but it is kind of wild, the depth there of talent of teams here that you could play top to bottom.
I have to mention though, I mean, because we're talking about Jacksonville State too. So
yeah,
Jamie has been at Jacksonville State forever. Becky's been at South forever. Murphy's been at Alabama forever. You just think about these schools, like they've had coaches there for a long time that have been staples. And I think anytime you have that stability, you can grow something really special. And so I give those coaches a lot of credit. All of those that I just mentioned are really, and I just know from things they've sent me, really huge on growing the sport in the state, whether it's moving the state tournament to a different location so it's a better atmosphere. I think all the college coaches are on board with the state being very good.
You're right. No, you're right. I mean, that's incredible. Those are all legendary coaches and have helped build it. It's been tremendous. It's tremendous deal there. A couple last things. You mentioned the RPI. I've talked to some coaches about this. I mentioned this to the committee, Matt Larson, when he was on the show back in April, because basketball has done away with the RPI. They've gone with the net rankings. And the question I ask is, if it's not good enough for basketball, is it good enough for softball? Where do you all as coaches stand on the RPI? Is that something you talk about? Is that something you just, that's what we have. So I'm just going to we're going to go with that. What kind of chatter has there been around the league? Because I'm curious from a Sunbelt standpoint, do you feel that the RPI helps you? Does it not help you? Or is that kind of a moot point?
I wish I was as educated on what basketball does. I know there's more weighted stuff towards things. I think I wish road, home and away. I could use some of that stuff being weighted maybe differently. I think I hate to say mid-major conference, I think it is tougher for us to get into the tournament. I think we all know that. I think you've got to do your job in the preseason. I think if you don't, it doesn't really matter what you do in your own conference. You're just, I think it's tough to watch a team do well and then they win 10 straight games and they fall 10 spots, and then a team loses 10 straight games and goes up 10 spots. So I think just without getting too deep into it, that's hard to watch and it's hard to track. But again, I think knowing that you might have a disadvantage in that part, you have to just work really hard and really schedule well and do like what we've done in the Sun Belt, is communicate a lot about what every team has to do to make it happen. So do I think that adjustments could be made to the RPI system? Absolutely. I wish I was, educated in it enough to know what those should be to make it, because I think it was I think this was the year that you saw so many mid-majors get in, and I think that's exciting. I think that we make up 75% of schools. Yes. It's exciting when a lot of them get in. So
no, I agree. And when we had Matt Larson on, he admitted because of the circumstances that there was, he tried to emphasize to the committee, watch more games, eyeballs. Don't just, you have the resume as a data point, but watch the games, because the resume doesn't tell the whole story. I hope that is a positive moving forward, that people don't just watch the games, that a good team based on eye test, balance that out with the data that you have, because basketball's trying to do that. I think basketball's got this quad system, home, away, and things like that. And I still think it's a work in progress, but it was alarming that they felt as basketball coaches, they didn't think the RPI was good enough. And I think softball, because basketball, to me, college basketball and college softball are very similar. The Sun Belt's a great league. It's kind of like the Big East in basketball in a lot of ways. Or, the A-10, there's no this talk of Power 5 in basketball as much, because you have the Gonzagas, you have the Mountain West. It seems more balanced. I feel softball should kind of be in a similar path.
I completely agree with you, because we're not like football. It's very different. There are a lot of really good softball programs out there, and they don't all come from the Power 5. So, and again, we're very proud. I think, like you said, you just have to know how to do it, and you have to go out on a limb and schedule right and know that you're going to have to show up every single game. There's just very little margin of error for, some schools compared to others when it comes to RPI. And when you know that, you just have to prepare for that. So we can make all the excuses in the world, or you just put your head down and get to work. And like I said, be very proud. I'm just really proud of the Sun Belt for what we did, and that 4 or 5 years of really digging deep and communicating has paid off.
No, it's been tremendous. Last question, as you can continue in the fall, and before you know it, February will be around, and you obviously have high expectations. What are some of the keys for this team now to accomplish those the goals that you have internally, and the high expectations?
Yeah, I think it's, you don't ever want to compare yourself to another team. I think it's really tough being the team that comes after a team that's done something that hasn't been done in whatever. And so I think we talked a lot about taking things that Team 28 did really well. So they rarely did anything bad twice. And, having some of those attributes that we found great, but being better at some other things that maybe Team 28 wasn't. I think this program has gotten to a point where we can walk out on the field and know we can win any game. I think that's going to be a key from pitch number one. Like I said, there's very little room for error if you want to accomplish not only winning the conference, but also making a regional. And so we talk about going 1-0 all the time. And I think we're going to have to just be a little more elite, and we are going to have to practice more elite. And we've done things in the fall that we never would have challenged our kids to do in previous years. And so long story short, honestly, just the way we're preparing is what's going to get us there in February. You can't expect to just show up and just try to be elite once you get in February. So we're trying to be elite right now and be better on the mound, be better at the plate, be better defensively, and just do some, more competitive elite things than we ever have before.
Well, Coach, we look forward to it. We look forward to seeing your team on the field once we get going here in 2022. I appreciate you taking the time, busy schedule. I know you always have in the fall here, but it's great to have a fall, and always appreciate you coming on to the show. It's always a blast to have you on to talk about not only your program, but talk about other softball topics. And we'll definitely do this again.
I appreciate it. And thanks for what you do for softball, man.